The Philippines, a country made up of over 7,000 islands, relies heavily on maritime travel to connect its people. The shipping industry is vital for transportation, commerce, and livelihood. However, on December 20th, 1987, one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history occurred off the coast of the Philippines. That was 4,386 lives lost. Although the details will be spared, viewer discretion is advised due to the sensitive nature of this tragic event. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. At the time, the MV Dona Paz was a passenger ferry operated by Sulpicio lines. The ferry, built in 1963, was 8,000 tons in gross tonnage and designed to carry a maximum of 1,500 passengers. However, when it departed from Tacloban City, Leyte, heading for Manila, it was overcrowded, carrying an estimated 4,000 passengers, nearly 3 times its rated capacity. Many of these passengers were unregistered, making the exact number difficult to confirm. The ferry's crew consisted of 56 individuals, all of whom were on board as well. The ship was also carrying goods, and among the passengers were families returning home for the holidays, workers, and travelers. It was an ordinary night for most aboard, with passengers preparing for what they expected to be a routine journey. Little did they know, the tragedy would unfold just hours into their voyage. At the same time, traveling in the opposite direction through the Tablas Strait was the MT Vector, an oil tanker. The MT Vector was a smaller vessel compared to others in its class, but it was still a significant cargo ship. The tanker had a gross tonnage of 3,000 tons and was carrying 8,800 barrels of gasoline, which made it especially hazardous if anything went wrong. The MT Vector was on its way to Manila. The two vessels were on a collision course, traveling along the same path through the Tablas Strait. The weather on the night of the incident was clear, but the waters were calm, with no significant wind or wave activity that could have obstructed visibility. Both vessels were operating in the same general area, and at the time of the incident, neither vessel had radar systems to detect the other. As a result, there was no direct communication or warning between the two ships. There were also reports that the ships did not have sufficient navigational safety equipment, which contributed to the disaster. At approximately 10:30 p.m., the MT Vector collided with the MV Dona Paz. The impact occurred when the tanker, which was moving at a speed of 6 knots, struck the passenger ferry on its starboard side. The force of the collision caused a large explosion on the MT Vector due to the gasoline that had leaked into the sea and ignited, sending flames rapidly across the tanker. Within moments, the fire spread to the MV Dona Paz, engulfing the ferry in flames. The MV Dona Paz was packed with passengers, and many found themselves trapped as the fire spread quickly. The ferry's emergency systems, which were insufficient, failed to provide any meaningful escape. The ship did not have enough life vests or life jackets for everyone on board, and the inadequate number of lifeboats left passengers with no chance of survival. Many people were unable to escape the fire due to the overwhelming heat and thick smoke that quickly filled the ferry. As the ferry began to burn, passengers tried to escape in panic. Some jumped into the cold waters of the Tablas Strait in a desperate attempt to survive. Meanwhile, the MT Vector, which was also burning, began to sink after the fire had spread. The blaze had consumed most of the tanker, and the explosion had severely damaged the ship's hull. The crew of the MT Vector was trapped in the inferno, with only a few of them surviving. The situation became even more dire as the MV Dona Paz began to sink. Within hours, the ferry was completely submerged, leaving only debris floating on the surface. Of the 4,386 people on board, it is believed that only 24 survived the disaster. Many of the survivors were those who had managed to jump into the sea or cling to debris after the ferry sank. The bodies of those lost were scattered across the waters, making recovery efforts difficult. The first rescue attempts were made by nearby ships and the Philippine Coast Guard. However, by the time they arrived, it was too late for most passengers. The Coast Guard did what they could, retrieving the bodies of victims and rescuing the few survivors from the sea. The disaster's scope was massive, and the official death toll was 4,386, though some estimates suggest the number could have been higher due to the number of unregistered passengers. In the aftermath, investigations into the cause of the disaster found that multiple factors had contributed to the catastrophe. The overcrowding on the MV Dona Paz was a critical issue, as the ferry had no business carrying such a high number of passengers. Additionally, the lack of proper safety equipment, such as sufficient life-saving devices, exacerbated the tragedy. The failure of both vessels to communicate and the absence of effective navigational systems were also cited as major contributing factors. The MT Vector's captain, who survived the incident, was later charged with reckless imprudence resulting in homicide, and the company operating the ferry, Sulpicio Lines, faced legal action for their role in the tragedy. The Philippine government was forced to reevaluate its maritime safety regulations and enforcement. For the families of the victims, the pain of the loss was overwhelming. Many of the survivors were left with only the memory of their loved ones, while the country as a whole mourned the staggering loss of life. The MV Dona Paz tragedy remains one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history, and the lessons learned from the event continue to shape the future of the Philippines' maritime safety practices. Thank you for staying with me till the end, and if you want more content like this, definitely leave a like and subscribe. And as always, I will see you in the next one.